Yes, well, today we're going to explore the MMM framework that I've been working on and promoting, and I'm hoping you'll find it as useful as I find it. So we're going to look at this framework, the MMM framework, and also look at the multimodal approach. I'm hoping that you'll find it all quite interesting. And if we've got time, and I hope we do, I've got a little sort of mini lesson which we can work through as well. Um, you can have a look. So if you've got 2 minutes just to write in the chat box what challenges do you face when you've got learners with different needs? Yes, the work given to um yes, there's so many challenges, isn't there, for different levels and different needs in the classroom. Well, I'm hoping this framework will meet some of those needs. Let's just move on. So I'm going to start talking about how I once taught one of my classes, or all of my classes actually, how to juggle. Why did I do this? Well, it started out as a little brain break during lessons, but I learnt so much more about learning and teaching from this activity than I ever thought I would. So having to break down juggling, and having to learn it myself, and having to break it down into a skill that they could do. So starting with one ball and simply showing them how to throw the ball without even trying to catch it meant that they then could see that mistakes were part of, and dropping the ball was part of the learning process. And they'd be able to see where exactly they did drop the ball. So they then had to fetch it and try again so that it would be nearer them that was within catching distance when it came to that bit. So you can see how moving from throwing one ball, just letting it drop, to throwing two balls, so they do throw, throw, drop, drop, and they had to hear the drop, drop coming separately. Again, that sort of helped them see what they had to do and what they had to adjust before they could even start to throw and catch. Then they'd be doing throw, throw, catch, catch, always starting with the same hand, but then have to do it with the other hand, throw, throw, catch, catch with the other hand. Um, but it was the way that they approached it meant that I learnt so much about how they how they learnt anything. And it's the same with language, that they would take this language, but if they weren't given these opportunities to actually use it, then they would they wouldn't it wouldn't stick. So it was they could see that they needed to have this practice in order to learn and in order to be able to move on to the next stage. So in terms of the MMM framework, and the MMM stands for meet, manipulate, make it your own. So they were introduced to the idea of juggling. They met the idea that they had to just throw to start with, and then throw and catch two balls, no more, and then gradually added in. That was them manipulating that that process, manipulating the idea of throwing and breaking it down to basics. And then once they could move on to the two balls and move on to three, and they had this ownership of juggling, they could take it away and they sort of went with it. And some of them would then come back and could do all these different tricks because they'd really got motivated in doing it. But breaking it right down to start with was absolutely key. Giving them the opportunity to fail, to drop, to experiment with it, and providing them then with an opportunity to keep going with it. Because, like I said, we used to do it as little brain breaks, so that was they and they could see the value of practice at home as well. They've got this ownership, they made it their own. So this is what the MMM framework is all about. So I'll move on. So here's a nice little diagram. So how does this fit in with our multimodal approach? So remember, with multimodal, we're not talking about learning styles. Research has kind of debunked the idea that, oh, you can only learn by in one way. Nobody learnt juggling just by reading about it or just by watching, but maybe they watched and maybe practiced as well or talked about it and they discussed it. There were so many things happening. That's multimodal. It's not just saying I can only learn like this because I am X kind of a person. They need to have it in various forms. So giving them access through multiple channels and repeated opportunities. So in terms of language learning, the learner needs to see the image, to hear it, to hear the words, to move from understanding to being able to work with it and then produce it. And I think all of this, we do it quite naturally anyway. And perhaps in the chat while I'm talking, you can just write in, do you do this naturally? Which of these do you naturally do most in your classroom? Do you give them the opportunity to meet? Do you give them the opportunity to manipulate? And most importantly, how do you make sure that they make that language their own? I'm going to look at each one individually now, though. So in terms of the meat section, like I was saying, it's about encountering. This isn't just about language. It could be about encountering content. So if you're a CLIL teacher and you have to work with subjects, it could be teacher training. And in fact, all of my training courses, I tend to go through this process as well. I want you to meet this idea, give you some opportunities to manipulate it to suit your teaching situation, because every teaching situation is different. And then gradually it becomes part of your repertoire, it becomes part of your fluency, and you've got this ownership of it. So the content word can mean anything. It can be language, it can be content, it could be an idea, it could be an experience, it really could be anything. And what do? You've got to provide the learners with all these different ways to appeal to all of the multimodal ways of listening, of speaking, of reading, seeing the word written down, experiencing it, contextualizing the language, having it, feeling it, and doing something with it. Whether it is with playing with cards or realia or everything. And you're guiding them through all of this as well. So that's the key thing, was making sure it's meaningful and accessible, but this is the input that you would do. We then would move into the manipulate stage, where the learners work with the content, they work with the language, or they work with the idea. And that could be a variety of tasks, couldn't it? And it's not about just doing one thing, but like I say, making sure there's a whole variety of different tasks where they can play with this. Or them some tasks to do, or tasks, or you want to do something on labels. And for sure, not kind of fill exercise. There's a lot more to it than that. And getting them to do notice and experiment and process everything that you're doing. So moving on to the next stage, which you might think is the final stage. And we've got where you really want them to make it their own. This is where you want them to get fluent in what they know. You want them to get fluent, whether it's in language or in the content, so that it's really kind of hardwired into them. You're providing opportunity for them to make this personal connection to whatever it is that you're teaching. And that might be through collaboration and peer teaching, or working with that in groups. It could be there's some kind of output usually, and it could be visual, it can be written, it could but creative, but they're actually using this and applying it perhaps into new contexts. So, like it says up there, you could be doing a performance or some drama, anything. But the real key is making sure that they've got this ownership of the language when they leave the classroom. They've got this deeper understanding of it, and they just feel that it is theirs. You've given it to them. They've worked with it, and they own it when they move out of the classroom. But it doesn't end there because as they're doing that final activity and making it their own, as the teacher, you're looking and you're identifying, but oh, I can see that they need such and such in order to make it even better. You can identify what language they need or what content they need in order to move forward. So there's a responsive loop here. It whatever's happening in the make it your own stage, you're picking out little bits. It might be to expand vocabulary. It might be to move on to using the same structure but in a different context because that's what they're trying to do in the make it your own stage. And so you're responding to that and putting it back into the next lesson as the next meet stage. Um, it might be that you have to start the whole thing again because they haven't got it, they haven't worked it, and that's absolutely fine. But your meet stage is therefore slightly different, and you've adjusted it to fit with the fact that they've already seen everything, and you might just change the context that you're presenting this in. So I hope that all kind of makes sense. And what are the benefits of this? Well, I really do think that it leads to this a much longer term understanding because they are using it and thinking about it and doing it. They're hardwiring their brains into learning these things. And in order to feel like they make it their own, that's what needs to happen. You're giving a lot more support to the learners as well as you're doing this process. Um, but it for me, it really does work across subjects. It works across everything. And if you think about it, it's everything you do. You've maybe got an idea from somebody and you'll take it. And conferences are the absolute best place to pick up these ideas. Like we heard earlier, all of the great activities that the panel shared earlier, and you'll have picked that up and go, well, we've met this idea, but it's not quite going to work in my classroom. I need to do it like this to fit with my style of teaching and the learners that I've got in my classroom. So you'll manipulate it, you'll put it into your classroom, and maybe that first time it's still not right, but you'll do it again and again, and then you just feel so confident. And before long, you'll be doing the choo-choo train activity and just doing it really quickly because you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't have to think about your instructions. You don't have to think about the language you're going to use in order to get the students to do it. The students no longer have to think about it either. They know exactly what they're doing. They're just focusing on the language that they're producing. Um, so this is why I think there's just benefits all round for thinking of it like this. So the whole framework looks like this. And at the end of this session, there is a link that you can download this as a poster as a little kind of reminder of what you need to do or what you need to think about every time you're planning your lessons. Okay, so my voice is just going to give up, but I'm hoping that it won't because I'm going to demonstrate a little lesson now that fits in with this MMM framework. But first I need a glass of water and see if there's any questions. Ooh, right. Okay, so just preparing myself. So I'm going to imagine that we've got a group of kids And the language that we're focusing on is, what do you like doing when you're not at school? And they're going to respond with, I like ing. Now, if you know me, you know I do like a little chant. And so I would introduce this in the form of a chant. And it would go like this. What do you like doing when you're not at school? What do you like doing? Oh, sorry, one more. What do you like doing when you're not at school? When you're not at school? When you're not at school? What do you like doing when you're not at school? I like playing football. What about you? Now, it doesn't matter that it doesn't rhyme. It's about the rhythm. It's about making sure that you are using contractions, that it sounds natural, that it contains the target language that you want them to use. So you can do it with a little click. I usually just get everybody clicking and then get it to say it and then get them to join in as quickly as possible. So I'm listening, I can hear everybody, so I hope you're all saying it. What do you like doing when you're not at school? When you're not at school? When you're not at school? What do you like doing when you're not at school? I like playing football. What about you? Okay, so that would be the first section. The next verse would be focusing on that response. I like playing football. What about you? What about you? What about you? I like playing football. What about you? What do you like doing when you're not at school? Okay. And you just keep going with this. You just keep getting it until repeating it until they can all do it. Keep that rhythm, keep that beat. You don't need to sing. You can even do it when you haven't got much of a voice. Okay. And if you're interested in how to create chants, you can check out my YouTube channel, which is Enriching ELT, and I'll teach you. There's a few videos on there on how to put chants together. But this chant is literally just following this rule. So A is what do you like doing? B, when you're not at school. And you repeat it like that. A, B, 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 A, B. Then you introduce a new phrase like playing football, which is C. What about you? D. And it's that simple. Then you just repeat the last phrase. I like playing football. What about you? So it's C, D, 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 C, D, A, B. You have a whole chant there. And you can just work with that for as long as you want. You can get them to rap it. You can get them just to put in some beats, get them to clap and tap on the table and really get them engaged with it. It's about making this language. They're still meeting it, but it's about here where I'm going. Um, so once they've got that phrase, once they've got all of that in their minds, you might want to introduce some of the verbs that you want them to use. I've reduced this down, obviously. We would, you know, you had loads more than this, but you want them to introduce some high frequency verbs like play, make, read, do, and take that would fit in to this little structure. So quickly in the chat books, what things do you think your students would come up for the word play? What are they likely to say? What I'm pretty sure we can easily guess what's the first one's going to be. Oh, I'll go on to the next slide. Yeah, usually it's play or board games, basketball, musical instruments. Yes, but all of that, absolutely. Guitar, perfect. What about make? It becomes a little bit more difficult, doesn't it, when you think of make? What do you like? What do they like to make? What do you think they might put for that? Yeah, cakes and cookies. That's what I came up with as well. Um, and forts. And videos, remember, I mean, there's so many of them now if you're doing teenagers or things, but they'll have access to these things. They love making something. It's making sandcastles, making anything. Yeah. So you would focus on the things that they do most in their classroom, So this is a way of getting and eliciting activities from them that are interesting. You want to make sure you're giving them the language that they need to use. Same with read. What do you think you could read, do, and take for that with your kids? Yeah, so they might want to read, what have I got? Read books, read stories, read comics, um, do gymnastics or do ballet. Um, they often have that, don't they? And the take would be something like, yeah, do karate. Yeah, I haven't quite got into that way, but yes, you're right. And take photos. Again, depends on the age of your learners. Obviously, you would choose the verbs that they're more likely to be. And you might want to keep it a little bit more controlled and only give them exact things, but um, take turns and take courses. Yes, that's that's what we like doing. So this is what I've come up with, some ideas. Yeah, take your dog for a walk, take some photos, take pictures, make cakes. Okay. So now you've introduced that target structure, if you can remember what it is. Yep. What do you like doing when you're not at school? And you can ask them to put in some of those phrases. And this is still kind of meeting stage, but we're moving into the manipulating stage where they start thinking about how they're going to change the language in order to fit it into this I like of, okay. So quick recap. We've got our little chant. What do you like doing when you're not at school? When you're not at school? When you're not at school? What do you like doing when you're not at school? I like playing football. What about you? I like playing football. What about you? What about you? What about you? I like playing football. What about you? What do you like doing when you're not at school? And then they're going to add in those verbs to that final bit. Okay. So now in the manipulate stage, this is where you're getting the learners to work with the language. You're going to notice it, they're going to change it, and they're going to practice it in safe, supported ways. So we're focusing on those sort of base verbs and turning them into their ing form so they can fit into our model sentence. So the manipulate stage means practicing and noticing. I think this is really important. And like I say, we're changing the base verbs by adding the ing and you're combining it with the I like. We'll start with the changing of the verbs. Oh, I've jumped to two screens. Oh, WebCon. Ah, sorry, I've just decided to jump around. That's what I'm looking for. That one. So we're changing the base verb, into the ing form. You've all done this. You've all got them to look at it and go, oh, we're not just adding an ing. What's actually happening? Why we're just adding? Why don't we? Sometimes we take away a letter. Sometimes we might double the last letter. I haven't got any examples of that here, but you're getting them to look at it and identify what those changes are, whether you're dropping that E or whether you're just making no change or whether you're doubling the final letter, all of those things. And you do your kind of little bit of input and you're getting them to change it. And you could do this in all sorts of different ways. Get them on whiteboards, you can get them with a to do it and to actually rub out where they have to change the letters. You can get them to have the letters and manipulate them physically, just get them to do some exercises on the paper or they're looking at it, but we are getting them to work with it and saying it. It's really important that they need to say it and talk it out at the same time, keeping that idea of multimodal approach going. Okay, so working with that, they are adding in this phrase, I like playing football, what about you? So they're going to start putting those sentences in into this ing thing. This is a bit like I think your controlled practice. It's safe, it's predictable, but more importantly, it's confidence building. We're keeping that frame the same, but some of the learners might be ready to start changing that like to love to the one that they really do enjoy the most. They might be ready to start changing it to I don't like. They want to comment on somebody else's, or even I hate. So there's loads of room for expansion for your stronger students. But this would be the core. Okay, so you can always think about this is what I'm doing. This is what I want them to manipulate, and make it their own. But there's expansion. There's always room and areas that they can expand into. Doesn't mean that you have to do more marking or anything. It's just providing them an opportunity to work a little bit more if they're ready. If they're ready. Okay. So that would be the kind of manipulation stage. But it's still not about real communication. So they've got all of the ingredients of the structure and the language, and they've played with it. And too often the next stage just gets forgotten about. Um, we've got to make sure that it's really communicative. Um, it's quite difficult to do a communicative thing online, but some of the ideas that I had. So it taking the ownership of it. So this is where it transformed that controlled language into that personal, meaningful, and memorable output. So don't stop after the manipulate stage. We've got to get the language from there and out somehow into a production stage. And making sure that it's really going to stick. Now, one of the first things I usually get them to do would be go back to the chant and get them to change the chant about something that they want, that the activity that they love the most or they like the most. So they're putting their own take on it already. Okay. And working in pairs, getting them to ask and answer the questions. I think that would work really, really well. And just back. Just quickly go back to this. So you'd get student A doing what do you like doing when you're not at school? When you're not at school, what do you not at school? What do you like doing when you're not at school? And get the partner to actually answer. I like playing football or whatever. I like making cakes. What about you? And then continuing, I like making cakes. What about you? What about you? What about you? I like making cakes. What about you? What do you like doing when you're not at school? And then they can just do pair work and stuff like that. That's still really, really controlled though, isn't it? This the kind of manipulating it hasn't got into the making your own stage yet. So one of the easiest things to do is to find someone who likes three things Why three? That means they have to talk to lots of people and they have to talk to as many people as possible. And they have to listen. They have to have this um, interaction, don't they? So find someone who likes three things the same as you. So they're just going to use the target structure. There's no chanting in this bit. It's just, oh, what do you like doing when you're not at school? I like reading books. Okay, I don't. I like da da da. Until they can find the three things, if they've got three things that they can find each other. Managing this quite easy. You get them just working in pairs, clap your hands, get them to move. Or even better, go back to that train. I love the train thing. I always do it as well. But I have my students. So if you weren't there for the train explanation, you have the students in two lines, pairs, working opposite each other. And then when you give an indication, one of them moves to the other end and they all shuffle up, but just one side moves and they all shuffle up. So they've got different things. What I usually do is send one person from the front through going, excuse me, to stop the conversations. It's a little hint that this conversation's coming to an end. They take the place at the end and they all move down. New partner, they can then start and ask. If they haven't finished their conversation in that time, it's kind of tough, isn't it? They've got to talk to somebody else. I think if you leave it to them just to find somebody, too often they will just stick with the same person and speak to them the whole time. And you want them to try and say it and repeat this as much as possible. So you want to make sure that these tasks at the end force real communication, that there's an information gap and that they need to find a match somehow. You need to make sure that it's recycling and using all or most of the vocabulary, or at least that core vocabulary that you've identified from that meet stage. You want to make sure that it uses the model that you also had from the meet stage and that they've manipulated. But the overall idea is for it to build confidence in your learners and repeating that same structure with the variation, of course. Um, so having as much movement in the classroom as well, getting the kids to stand up, obviously that's really going to appeal to kids. You want them to have some social interaction and that purpose. Too often when I've done training sessions, teachers often run out of time or that they skip this stage or that's only like 5 minutes and they do it so quickly. But that it's so important. I think you need to make sure that you give as much attention to this stage as you do all the other stages. It's about making sure, as I've said, and I keep saying, it's about making sure that they have ownership, that they really feel it belongs to them when they leave the classroom. Without it, if they've met it and they've manipulated it and they haven't used it, it's not going to stick. And so many teachers will say, oh, how can I help them they should know this already. How can I help them get to know it? Well, they should know it, but if they don't, it's because you haven't given them the opportunity to use it. Make sure that they are getting fluent in what they should already know. Don't keep moving on and saying, oh, well, we've done this, we've done the past simple, we've done this, blah, 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 blah. If you haven't actually given them the opportunity to use it and to get confident in it. It's essential for their memory, it's essential for their confidence, and it's just helping with this real communication. Um, and while they're doing the activity like this, you, the teacher, you're not just sitting down, you're monitoring and you're listening for the accuracy and the confidence, and you're listening to see if they're using that structure correctly, if they're using the vocabulary correctly, if they are trying to say something, but they don't have the language to say, it's because they need that language. that's a cue for you to say, okay, the next lesson I need to teach this because that's what they wanted to say. And if you'd got to that stage and you haven't managed to find it, the language that they actually need, okay, you need to think about where you could have put that in earlier. Um, okay. So what other, if we're thinking about this language, what other make it your own tasks could you do with this structure? Has anybody got any other suggestions? Yeah, they could just write about it. They could just write. Yeah, you could change it into a bingo card. Is there a communicative act? The bingo thing I think would work quite nicely even in the meet and the manipulate stage. But would it work when they're trying to communicate? You'd have to really think about how you're going to plan that. Um, um, these activities I would do with, well, it depends on the level, age and level of your students, doesn't it? I've done this with adults, to be fair. I've done it with younger kids. I have done chants and all sorts like yeah, a charades game would be great as well. Um, yeah, once they've got this information, it's using it, isn't it? They could go around and ask everybody or find out how many of them like playing football and put that information into a graph, into a chart and actually produce something. Um, yeah, we need to get it. Yeah, I think we could make this into a board game. You could have it have the verbs all the way around on a board game, get them to make it. And as they're going round, they have to ask each other the questions and they can only move forward if they get somebody who answers. You know, we say, what do you like doing when you're not at school? And they have to use that verb that's there and put it in that I don't like category. Um, oh, you've got some great ideas here. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to come draw a picture of what they like doing, actually, and writing about it, doing it as a diary entry. There's loads, isn't there? So if we just reflect on those three stages and how they fitted into our MMM uh, things, our MMM, my MMM philosophy, the framework. So what kinds of inputs would you use for the meat stage? How else could you have done it if you're not comfortable doing chants? And I know some of you aren't. How else could you introduce that language? Maybe you can come up with some ideas in the chat. What about the activities to help you manipulate that language? I like that idea as well, Alison, to introduce a friend to other people, saying they like doing or he or she likes doing. Yeah, you could show them different pictures of different items that they like and they dislike or don't like doing. As well as you know, finding somebody with three things that they like doing the same, which is ideal, isn't it? Because then you go, oh, you like playing football too, blah blah blah. Um, Finding things that they really don't have in common, I think, you know, it could be all or putting a different spin on it. Um, yeah, you could do like some structured drills and semi-structured skills where you might just show the verb and you're putting it in. I like playing football. Then you put in a picture of making cakes, and they say, I like making cakes. Um, the strangest thing that you both like doing. I think that's a good one too. So, um, I'm so conscious of time because I know that the next person will be ready to go as well. We need to have a little breather between chant and questions maybe. So just a quick summary is that thinking of multimodal approaches and doing things in as many different ways really is inclusive. It helps. What the idea is to help all children access this input, and they're all going to access it differently. But you want them to do it. You want them to be successful. So it's not just about saying, "Well, I'm going to do it like this because that suits my teaching." If it doesn't suit half of the kids in the class, I think you need to do it in multiple ways. So yes, we did it as a chant, but we could also just do it as the conversation. You might have a little comic strip as well to introduce it so they can see how this pair work would happen and somebody saying, "Oh, what do you like doing when you're not at school?" "I like da da da. What about you?" "I like da da da." So you can have a little dialogue as well, and that would all be part of the meet stage, but in lots of different modalities. Um, each of these stages builds confidence. It helps them retain their language because they're seeing and hearing and working with the language in different modes. It means that there's so much variety and repetition, they are much more likely to be able to use it and retain it. And you don't need three different lesson plans. You need one lesson plan that's a core that you can adapt and adjust to fit in with everyone. You might say only do two of these, two or three verbs as opposed to everyone else doing eight, whatever. Or you're expanding some of the higher levels, saying, "Oh yeah, you could change I like to I love," or and everything. But you've got one core lesson plan and you're going to change and fit in around that, meeting all of their diverse needs. So back to our little lovely framework here, and just remembering how it looks. And this was the poster, which when I shared it with somebody else, he said, "Oh, I want that in my classroom so I can just really tick off those points, and make sure that I'm doing all of those things across the week when they're in quite a few lessons every time. Like, have I made sure that there's visual and tactile work happening? Have I made they're doing some collaborative work and stuff. So there's a lot there. I will put this up so that if you're on your phone, you can actually just go straight onto your QR code. If you're on your laptop and you've got your phone, this QR code will take you straight to a form to fill in, so you can sign up to my newsletter, but also get that poster for free. And I've also got um, social medias. Like I said, I've got a YouTube channel where I show and break down how to make chants. On my website, there's also a link there to create a lovely chant for irregular verbs if you're interested. And everything I do would be meet, manipulate, and make it your own. So I'm hoping you all enjoyed meeting this framework, and it's now your job to go and manipulate it and make it your own. Are there any questions in the panel? Hi, Michelle.
There aren't any questions in the box. Well, there was one that I copied from the chat, which was just about what age group you would do these types of activities with.
Yeah, I honestly think it could be any. Like I say, I have chanted with adults, and I've chanted with kids, little ones. It depends on your course, doesn't it? On your book and your classroom. You would just adapt the language to suit the level and the age group. I mean, there's a lot of language there for very little ones, but you just make it really simple. The challenge that I would set you now to manipulate this is to just go and look at a course book and choose a phrase from the course book and make it into a chant, um, using that structure A, B, 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 A, B, C, D, and see how you get on. I'm always interested to see what people do, so do please get in touch. Um, Thank you very much. It's like, how do I sort
Thank
of...
you, Jane. Thank you. It was really interesting, and I really like the idea of manipulating the language and making it your own. And I think it's really important to make language meaningful for students. And I think your framework helps teachers structure their lessons in a meaningful and effective way.